Welcome to our YouTube channel, Zest Study.
Hello everyone, welcome to our YouTube channel Zest Study. Now we are talking about teaching methods. The term teaching method refers to the general principles, pedagogy, and management strategies used for classroom instruction. A teaching method comprises the principles and methods used by teachers to enable student learning. These strategies are determined partly on subject matter to be taught and partly by the nature of the learner. For a particular teaching method to be appropriate and efficient, it has to be in relation with the characteristic of the learner and the type of learning it is supposed to bring about. Suggestions are there to design, and selection of teaching methods must take into account not only the nature of the subject matter, but also how students learn. Your choice of teaching method depends on what fits you, your educational philosophy, classroom demographic, subject area, and school mission statement. Howard Gardner identified a wide range of modalities in his multiple intelligences theories. The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator and Keirsey Temperament Sorter, based on the works of Jung, focus on understanding how people's personality affects the way they interact personally, and how this affects the way individuals respond to each other within the learning environment. Let us talk about different methods and philosophies of teaching. 1. Lecture method. This is the one-way communication from teacher to students. The lecture method is just one of several teaching methods, though in schools it is usually considered the primary one. The lecture method is convenient for the institution and cost-efficient, especially with larger classroom sizes. This is why lecturing is the standard for most college courses. When there can be several hundred students in the classroom at once, lecturing lets professors address the most people at once, in the most general manner, while still conveying the information that they feel is most important, according to the lesson plan. While the lecture method gives the instructor or teacher chances to expose students to unpublished or not readily available material, the students plays a passive role, which may hinder learning. While this method facilitates large class communication, the lecturer must make constant and conscious effort to become aware of student problems and engage the students to give verbal feedback. It can be used to arouse interest in a subject provided the instructor has effective writing and speaking skills. 2. Demonstration method. The word demonstration means to give demos or to perform the particular activity or concept. In demonstration method, the teaching learning process is carried in a systematic way. Demonstration often occurs when students have a hard time connecting theories to actual practice or when students are unable to understand applications of theories. In order to make a success of demonstration method, 3 things are necessary. Demonstrations are similar to written storytelling and examples in that they allow students to personally relate to the presented information. Memorization of a list of facts is a detached and impersonal experience, whereas the same information conveyed through demonstration becomes personally relatable. Demonstrations help to raise student interest and reinforce memory retention because they provide connections between facts and real-world applications of those facts. Lectures, on the other hand, are often geared more towards factual presentation than connective learning. One of the advantages of the demonstration method involves the capability to include different formats and instruction materials to make the learning process engaging. This leads to the activation of several of the learner's senses, creating more opportunities for learning. The approach is also beneficial on the part of the teacher because it is adaptable to both group and individual teaching. While demonstration teaching, however, can be effective in teaching math, science, and art, it can prove ineffective in a classroom setting that calls for the accommodation of the learner's individual needs. 3. Problem-solving method. A problem is a task for which problem solving may be a purely mental difficulty, or it may be physical and involve manipulation of data. The person confronting it wants or needs to find a solution because the person has no readily available procedure for finding the solution. The person must make an attempt to find a solution. Problem solving is the act of defining a problem, determining the cause of the problem, identifying, prioritizing, and selecting alternatives for a solution, and implementing a solution. In a problem-solving method, children learn by working on problems. This enables the students to learn new knowledge by facing the problems to be solved. The students are expected to observe, understand, analyze, interpret, find solutions, and perform applications that lead to a holistic understanding of the concept. This method develops scientific process skills. This method helps in developing brainstorming approach to learning concepts. The students' thinking on problem and their understanding of the science behind it is based on common sense. It does not start from textual knowledge. Rather, it proceeds from experiencing to gradually forming concepts through books at later stage. It is a process from practice to theory, not vice versa. Knowledge here is not a goal, but a natural outcome of working on tasks. Students live in the real world and like to deal with concrete things where they can touch, feel, manipulate things. Then the method is useful in igniting the process of science learning. 4. Project-based method. Students work on a project over an extended period of time, from a week up to a semester, that engages them in solving a real-world problem or answering a complex question. They demonstrate their knowledge and skills by creating a public product or presentation for a real audience. As a result, students develop deep content knowledge as well as critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, and communication skills. Project-based learning unleashes a contagious, creative energy among students and teachers. When working with students who are diagnosed with learning disabilities, educators may overlook PBL. Maybe educators feel pressure from parents or administrators. Maybe educators struggle to find the planning time to incorporate PBL into their practice. Whatever the reason, with a little time, planning, and teamwork with peers, PBL can be incorporated into all classrooms, into all subjects, and for all students. PBL is a flexible and engaging teaching approach that can be used to design new lessons or to improve lessons you have previously. Educators use PBL for many reasons, including increased student engagement, possibilities for teaching and assessing multiple skills, and possibilities for differentiation. 5. Discovery method. Discovery learning is a technique of inquiry-based learning and is considered a constructivist-based approach to education. It is also referred to as problem-based learning, experiential learning, and 21st century learning. It is supported by the work of learning theorists and psychologists Jean Piaget, Jerome Bruner, and Seymour Papert. Jerome Bruner is often credited with originating discovery learning in the 1960s, but his ideas are very similar to those of earlier writers such as John Dewey. Bruner argues that practice in discovering for oneself teaches one to acquire information in a way that makes that information more readily viable in problem solving. This philosophy later became the discovery learning movement of the 1960s. The mantra of this philosophical movement suggests that people should learn by doing. Discovery learning is a kind of independent learning. The knowledge acquisition is done without getting any assistance from a teacher. It is a type of self-exploration to reach a positive result. Discovery learning is an inquiry-based learning method, so it belongs to active learning. Discovery learning is a type of learning where learners construct their own knowledge by experimenting. With thousands of standards-aligned resources, discovery education provides you with the tools to teach your students to think critically about the content they use, see, and experience in their daily lives, and to ask questions about the world around them. 6. Critical pedagogy method. Critical pedagogy is a teaching philosophy that invites educators to encourage students to critique structures of power and oppression. It is rooted in critical theory, which involves becoming aware of and questioning the societal status quo. In critical pedagogy, a teacher uses his or her own enlightenment to encourage students to question and challenge inequalities that exist in families, schools, and societies. This educational philosophy is considered progressive and even radical by some because of the way it critiques structures that are often taken for granted. If this is an approach that sounds like it is right for you and your students, keep reading. Obviously, implementing critical pedagogy will look different in different subjects, and what works for one class may not work for another. For example, a history teacher may challenge an event that is traditionally seen as progressive, while a literature teacher may question a common cultural stereotype found in a book. A science teacher, on the other hand, may encourage students to look at the impact of scientific discoveries on marginalized groups. Often, this will involve finding common bonds between subjects, as the critical approach is not confined to only one area of education and culture. A classroom teacher who knows the students well should design a lesson plan that helps to engage students in learning activities using the dialogical method. The design should include the classroom strategy on how the students will be engaged in dialogue to find out the solution of the given problem. Student-student or student-teacher dialogue will make a clear and reasonable judgment of the issue. The teacher will play the role of facilitator to support so that the students reach a valid conclusion. Teacher-guided dialogical approach will help the students to achieve a growth mindset of thinking with openness and reasoning. 7. Collaborative method. This approach actively engages learners to process and synthesize information and concepts, rather than using rote memorization of facts and figures. Learners work with each other on projects, where they must collaborate as a group to understand the concepts being presented to them. Through defending their positions, reframing ideas, listening to other viewpoints, and articulating their points, learners will gain a more complete understanding as a group than they could as individuals. Collaborative learning is the educational approach of using groups to enhance learning through working together. Groups of 2 or more learners work together to solve problems, complete tasks, or learn new concepts. Collaborative teaching includes members of the academic community, driven towards one goal. The goal of imparting education the right way. Once a goal is established, ideas and perspectives are exchanged. It's not just one teacher surrounded by students. It is a group of teachers taking responsibility for their ways of imparting education. When a group of teachers invests in a common goal of student learning, it benefits the student in many ways. When expertise, learning methods, and resources are exchanged, a student's learning experience is enhanced. A shift of thinking is required for collaborative teaching to start and be implemented. Students are actively involved in learning, rather than following instructions, in this method. A role shift takes place, where teachers and students become learners. 8. Constructivist pedagogy. Constructivism in education has roots in epistemology, which in philosophy is a theory of knowledge, which is concerned with the logical categories of knowledge and its justificational basis. Epistemology also focuses on both the warranting of the subjective knowledge of a single knower and conventional knowledge. In constructivism, hence, it is recognized that the learner has prior knowledge and experiences, which are often determined by their social and cultural environment. Learning is therefore done by students constructing knowledge out of their experiences. While the behaviorist school of learning may help understand what students are doing, educators also need to know what students are thinking and how to enrich what students are thinking. There are scholars who state that the constructivist view emerged as a reaction to the so-called transmission model of education, including the realist philosophy that it is based on. Constructivism is an important learning theory that educators use to help their students learn. Constructivism is based on the idea that people actively construct or make their own knowledge, and that reality is determined by your experiences as a learner. Basically, learners use their previous knowledge as a foundation and build on it with new things that they learn. Constructivism is crucial to understand as an educator because it influences the way all of your students learn. Teachers and instructors that understand the constructivist learning theory understand that their students bring their own unique experiences to the classroom every day. Their background and previous knowledge impacts how they are able to learn. Educators are able to use constructivist learning theory to help their students understand their previous knowledge. 9. Reflective pedagogy. Reflective teaching means looking at what you do in the classroom, thinking about why you do it, and thinking about if it works, a process of self-observation and self-evaluation. By collecting information about what goes on in our classroom, and by analyzing and evaluating this information, we identify and explore our own practices and underlying beliefs. This may then lead to changes and improvements in our teaching. Reflective teaching involves recognizing, examining, ruminating over the way an individual teaches. As individuals possess their own background and experience, bring certain beliefs, assumptions, knowledge, attitudes, and values to teaching. When teaching reflectively, instructors think critically about their teaching and problem solve for recurring issues, rather than relying on unchanging, established personal norms. This critical analysis can draw on a variety of sources. Brookfield, 2017, lays out 4 crucial sources, including students' eyes, colleagues' perceptions, personal experience, and theory and research. Instructors can use various tools and methods to learn from these sources and reflect on their teaching, ranging from low-key to formal, and personal to intercollegial. Now we talk about student evaluation and assessment. There are different evaluation methods. Among them, we talk only 3 evaluation methods. First, we talk about formative evaluation. Formative evaluations are evaluations for learning. They are often ungraded and informal. Their aim is to provide both the students and instructor with a gauge of where their level of understanding is at the current moment, and enable the instructor to adjust accordingly to meet the emerging needs of the class. Formative evaluations are particularly important because they allow you to make changes that affect the current students, while the end-of-term forms only affect future classes. In addition, formative evaluations signal your class that you are indeed interested in what and how they are learning, and in their responses to your teaching. Formative assessment involves a continuous way of checks and balances in the teaching learning processes. The method allows teachers to frequently check their learners' progress and the effectiveness of their own practice, thus allowing for self-assessment of the student. Practice in a classroom is formative to the extent that evidence about student achievement is elicited, interpreted, and used by teachers, learners, or their peers to make decisions about the next steps in instruction that are likely to be better or better founded than the decisions they would have taken in the absence of the evidence that was elicited. 1-minute paper. Check student understanding in a lesson by asking them to take out a sheet of paper and take 1 minute to, for example, write down an explanation of a concept, solve an equation, or draw a main point from a reading. Madhyast point paper. Check student understanding in a lesson by asking them to take out a sheet of paper and take 1 minute to write down a single question about, or the most confusing aspect of, the topic of for the day. Directed paraphrase. After working through a topic, ask students to explain the content to a lay audience in their own words. Mid-semester evaluation. In order to conduct a mid-semester evaluation, there may be particular questions you would like to ask. See sample links below for ideas. If you do use some form of midterm evaluation, we encourage you to discuss the results with your class, explaining, for instance, why you can't cut down on some topic, or why, based on the suggestions of the class, you will add a discussion of a particular topic. Summative evaluation. Summative assessment, evaluation, comes at the end of learning, while formative assessment provides information and support during the learning. Summative assessment aims to evaluate what students know, can do, and can articulate at a given point in time. This evaluation is reported verbally or in writing to others. Summative assessment is more reliable and valid when evidence of learning is collected from multiple sources over time, and when the evidence is examined in light of quality expectations or achievement indicators. Summative assessment, at the classroom level, is based on evidence collected both during the learning by students and teachers as well as evidence collected at the end of learning. Evidence of learning may include observations of students engaged in the process of learning, products students create, test results, and student articulations of them. Understandings as evidenced through sources such as teacher notes, student self-assessments, or recordings of discussions. Summative evaluation requires sufficient evidence that the intended learning has been achieved. In the past, the assumption has been that such evaluation was best done externally, with tests and other forms of evaluation created and monitored by outside sources. What research has revealed, however, is that when teachers are involved in becoming assessment literate and engaged in a conscious development and application of consistent criteria for summative evaluation, valid and reliable summative evaluation of the learning are more likely to result. Further, when clearly specified criteria that describe progressive levels of competence and procedures are developed and used to judge student work for evaluation purposes, teachers are more able to reliably assess a greater range of classroom work. Diagnostic evaluation. A diagnostic assessment is a form of pre-assessment where teachers can evaluate students' strengths, weaknesses, knowledge, and skills before their instruction. An identical assessment may be given post-instruction to identify if students have met the course's required learning objectives. With this form of assessment, teachers can plan meaningful and efficient instruction and can provide students with an individualized learning experience. Written by students, the diagnostic assessment is a tool for teachers to better understand what students already know about a topic when submitted before the start of a course. A diagnostic assessment refers to an assignment written at the beginning and end of a course. Post-course assessments can be compared with pre-course assessments and can show students' potential improvement in certain areas. These assessments allow the instructor to adjust the curriculum to meet the needs of current and future students. Diagnostic tests are designed to analyze individuals' performance and provide information on the causes of difficulty. If a pupil continues to experience failure in a subject in spite of the use of prescribed alternative methods of instruction during the course of instruction, in that stage teacher takes the help of diagnostic evaluation. So it assists the teacher in determining exactly where the learning or teaching has been successful and where it has failed.
Thanks for watching the video.